Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. All things Middle Earth here, and typically we do more gaming Lord of the Rings content on this channel, but I had the new Rings of Power Season 2 trailer in my editing software, and I was going through frame by frame, just seeing what I could see looking at it, and I thought it might be fun to film kind of a reaction and breakdown of the trailer. Now, I am by no means an expert, but I do consider myself at least somewhat versed in lore and knowledge of the Lord of the Rings or of Middle Earth, so thought it'd be fun to kind of break this down and just speculate about what we can see. So if you guys like this kind of different content that's not necessarily gaming related in the Lord of the Rings universe, let me know, because maybe we'll do more stuff like this in the future. But let's go ahead and hop into the trailer breakdown. Now, I will say this will be linked down in the description below, so if you want to watch through the entire thing yourself, feel free to do so first. Maybe I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. This will be down there if you want to check that out. I will also say I removed the sound as we're going through it here because I found it kept jumping in and out and found it hard to kind of focus on what we're actually looking at here. So we're just going to focus on what we can visually see in the video. Now, first up, we get a picture or a video of Sauron walking forward towards Mordor, also followed up by another video of him looking sort of downcast or discouraged, maybe angry, not 100% sure, but we get two shots of him to start things out, kind of setting the tone that it's going to, I think, be a very evil focused season. Again, he's been outed then as previously who we thought this Halbrand character was, so now people know that he's returning in some form. We're going to see everyone responding to that, but I do feel like this sets the tone for the season as being very focused around the evil aspects of Sauron and really any of his works he's trying to do. We then get a shot of Durin the Fourth, who is talking about an ancient and powerful evil returning. Now, if you watch this in order, you might think he's talking about Sauron, which he could be, to be fair, but I do think here he is talking about the Balrog. If you watched season 1, we saw the very end, we got teased that there was going to be some form of the Balrog. Again, we don't know how much they'll get into it. I feel like even lore-wise, I don't think it lined up 100% with the timing, so I'm interested to see how they kind of tell that version of the story, but I think Durin here is talking about the Balrog, and they're going to have some dealings with him in season 2. We then see this very creepy looking, like worm-like creature, and maybe it's just me who's seeing things, but as I watched through this for like the ninth time, it almost looks like right here on the head there is some like skull looking thing, like this thing is almost like consumed someone, and again, maybe not, but it looks like it's like not there and then kind of pops up at the end. 100% could just be me seeing this for the fifth time and thinking it's something it's not, but could also be some kind of beast or monster that has eaten or consumed someone, and you can see the remains of what's left of them. We then get this shot of, I believe this is Elrond above me with Galadriel here and some other elves, and if you look, you can see some eyes right here and on the right side of the screen. I think these, at first I thought that might be Nazgul. I'm in editing right now, and it kind of clicked to me that obviously we're earlier in the Second Age, so unless this is way far in the future where there would actually have been time for Sauron to gift the Nine Rings to men, there's no way this is Nazgul. My whole theory was it makes sense for Amazon to try and put Nazgul wherever they can, because that'd be a draw for people, but it would be pretty like outside of the actual lore, because obviously Sauron gifts the Nine Rings to the men, which over time it then corrupts them and they turn into the Nazgul or Ringwraith. So my final guess is that I do think these are some kind of whites, like the Barrow Wights, but we will see once we actually get the season out. But I retract my statement on it being Nazgul, because I just don't think that makes sense in the time period unless it is way far in the future, which also would not really make sense. Okay, another editing kind of retraction or edit here, at least to my thoughts as I keep going through, and now I'm seeing it for like the 10th or 11th time. This next scene we get is of some person who has these cuts on their hands. There's blood. There's some kind of what would appear to be like a blood sacrifice or ritual thing happening, which is then we have all these moths around and we see all these moths flying out into this open area. On the whole, I have no idea what's happening or where this is. I kind of was comparing it originally to the like dwarven architecture that we see, if I can find it, right here in this area. If we look at the different pillars and the fire and how they're being held or whatever, it just didn't look quite the same to me as what we see in this scene, so I'm not really sure where exactly this is. My guess on who this was that this was one of the mystics. I was looking it up more, and I guess Amazon confirmed that these are priestesses of Melkor, which is kind of cool, but I didn't know they'd officially confirmed their identities and who they were, but they were priestesses of Melkor. And then I was looking up and the actual video where we see the three of them. And again, this could be a different priestess of Melkor, a different entity like that, but they don't really look the same to me. The robes are kind of similar, but we have these kind of gauntlets here. We've got a belt on here. And if we go back here, there's no one that really matches that description exactly that has the same, like, I feel like this middle one maybe looks the closest, but they don't have a belt on. So obviously they could have changed clothes. That's fine. But I was kind of doubling down that I thought this would for sure potentially be one of them, but it looks different to me now. So I don't know who this is going to be. Let me know if you guys have any ideas. But the other idea, there's the character Miri, who is the queen of Numenor, if I'm not butchering her name. I had the thought that it could have been her as well. I have no idea what she'd be involved in that would be, dealing with this many moths, but just was thinking of characters that potentially would have like gauntlets on and have been seen in kind of robe-esque things like this. And I did butcher it. It's Muriel, not Muri. But this is her. And again, I don't think that makes sense either. Again, was kind of picking up on like the lower part of her wardrobe is maybe looking like the robe that we see here, but I don't think that's it either. So this might be a new character. It might be a mystic who's wearing something different. I'm probably overthinking who this is, but I'm excited to see who they actually end up portraying it as. Like the mystics were kind of cool, but a little bit weird. And so I don't know. I'd be interested to see if they explore that anymore. Actually touching on like them being these kind of worshippers or past like priestesses of Melkor. So we'll see, but I think it's going to be a priestess of Melkor, but they just don't match up to me, so I'm not sure. We then see these roots kind of crawling out from this tree and extending towards an individual here. I think my money is on this being Celebrimbor. If you go to the very first shot, you can see almost the entire face, although he is further away. But I think this is Celebrimbor, and I think this is Sauron, potentially in his fair form for the first time, trying to sort of ensnare or manipulate Celebrimbor so he can craft his rings of power. Could be wrong, but that's what my money's on. I think that does look sort of like him. So I think that this could be him trying to get into Region. This could also be after he's already gotten in and maybe Celebrimbor is finding out what's going on. We'll actually see him later and he looks a lot more beat up. So this could be a sequence where he gets sort of beat up by Sauron after finding out who he really is or what his intentions are. So we'll see exactly how it plays out, but I do think that's the two of them. We then get this sequence of orcs marching, not 100% sure where, but I did notice after my second or third time looking, there is what looks to be a troll right here to me. So if you kind of roll back, you can definitely see there is a much larger individual up there than obviously one of these orcs. So I do think whoever these orcs are, they have a troll with them. We then see Celebrimbor again here. This for sure is him. And he's looking on to this kind of fire or glow happening. And we see as it pans around and he walks towards it, that it looks like a silhouette of the eye with even a silhouette of a individual in the middle, especially depending on the brightness of your screen. You can really see in the middle a figure there that looks like Sauron. Again, both my monitors look a little bit different on them, but 99% sure this is him seeing for the final time, who Sauron really is, or maybe there's just some kind of magic happening that he's overseeing and realizing, who this guy is. But definitely think this is a foreshadowing of the eye of Sauron here. And again, I know these aren't all just back-to-back scenes. These could be from multiple different episodes, but we do get the tease of like the eye of Sauron, and then we see kind of an elven fair form of Sauron here. I will say I'm not like a huge fan of this portrayal or just how it looks. It just doesn't look, I guess, elven enough or different enough to me. I really love the portrayal in the Shadow of Mordor game. That version, that fair form of Sauron just looked so good to me. So my thought is, obviously they have an actor who's playing Sauron. They want it to be kind of grounded in that person, so people, especially that are less familiar, might not get lost. Like who is this guy now all of a sudden? But it still has the resemblance of who we know as Sauron. So I think that makes sense from doing it live action and casting someone. But I do love the fair form we see in the video game Shadow of Mordor. It also looks like the elves here are kind of running around, like there's some chaos that's happening. Again, it could be that orc army that's marching up, and maybe they're going to come attack so he can get the rings out of there. But he doesn't seem to be found out at this point, at least at this shot here, but they are kind of running and panicking a little bit in the background. We then get a nice cliff shot view here with our date, August 29th for the second season, leading up to a riding shot of, again, who I'm just going to go on a limb and say that is the same person. That's Galadriel there. I would think this is potentially Galadriel and Elrond, potentially rushing back to Eregion to help, because I think some kind of obviously things going to happen there. We just don't know exactly when or how much we'll see this season, but I think the end of the season will be sort of a main confrontation in Eregion where Sauron's trying to get back the Rings of Power, which we'll see a little bit more on that in a second, but I do think this is them riding potentially in that direction. We then see this woman in the water. Not 100% sure who this is either. This could also be the Numenorian queen. Potentially, this could be a dream that she's having about Numenor being taken over. So I'm not sure if this is real or not, or some kind of a dream she's having, if that's even her. I could be totally wrong, and I'm not 100% sure who it is, because we do see next in this sequence this crazy Watcher in the Water-esque creature in the water, although it doesn't look like the live action adaptation we have seen of the Watcher in the Water near Moria. So could be a different being altogether, could be a different adaptation of it, it could be a dream, I'm not sure, but it does look pretty freaking cool. We'll have to see if it ends up being real or who that is that's dealing with it there. We then see Durin the Fourth's wife. I actually thought this could be her for a second when you look at it here, which going back and forth, it kind of does. But then again, I see her here and I feel like the resemblance is a little bit different. So I'm not sure who it is. Let me know if you guys have any idea, but we do see her here just looking back. We just see her for just 1 second. Nothing really to glean from that. But we do then see King Durin III here, and he is looking through a hole. I'm assuming this is potentially the Mithril area that he had closed off. Maybe he's going back there. Again, could be something totally different, but my thought is potentially, as you'll see in a second, he's going to get a Ring of Power. Maybe the greed starts to set in, and maybe he does, after the first season of him saying they're not messing with that, he does go back to kind of mine the Mithril. He gets a little bit greedy, which then kind of is the final straw for the Balrog, and they start dealing with him, which in the next sequence we can see there is this boulder, or like, again, could be a piece of dwarven structure, but there's a ton of what look like dwarves here to me who are definitely having a bad day. So we're going to see some action in Khazad Dûm happening for sure, but this boulder is coming down and landing on those poor folks right there on the bridge. We then get our first shot of Elendil. I loved him in season 1. He was one of my favorite characters, and we have this guy right above me who appears to be trying to restrain or hold him back. In fact, a lot of these people are trying to hold back, so not sure what's happening. We haven't seen a whole lot in Numenor on the conflict happening there, so it could be that conflict coming to a head, but I'm excited to see more of Elendil in season 2 for sure. We then see Galadriel reaching out in the other direction, although I don't think these two sequences are related. She's in a very red area. Again, it looks like things are maybe on fire. Maybe this is around the Mount Doom area. Maybe it's something with Sauron. Could also be a dream of some kind. I'm not sure, but I don't think these two scenes are necessarily related, even though they're back to back, but she is screaming and reaching out here to something or someone. We then see this orc here who is breaking all sorts of OSHA violations and licking his knife here, but he's got the catapults behind him. Again, some kind of battle is about to happen. I think, like I said, in the Eregion area, I think we see sort of an overhead shot here as well of what I think to be that city in Eregion, and you can see over in the distance some lights. So potentially this could be the orc army arriving and setting up to attack, and people kind of, we don't seem to see, like, it doesn't look like the city's kind of really moving a whole lot, although we don't see very many people, but the people we do see on the wall aren't moving a whole lot. So this also could just be an overhead shot that means nothing, but it does look like that same city that we've seen a lot of in Eregion. We then get a shot of the 3 elven rings of power, and what looks to be the first time they're all putting them on, like we see in the prologue in The Lord of the Rings. This is where we see them kind of being put on for the first time here by the elves. Again, made without the corruption and the influence of Sauron, so not affected by his power. We then get the shot of this tree. This is that elven tree we saw in the first season that looked like it was kind of dying or struggling. And here, if you look as you move forward, it looks like it's blooming very quickly, but then they do turn yellow very quickly. And so at first I thought maybe this tree was just blooming very quickly and we see a sequence of that, but I actually think something is happening, and it could just be the kind of destruction of the elven city in Eregion that's causing this kind of decaying of the tree, or the preservation that the elves have. Because maybe instead of it blooming, it's actually kind of growing out, and these leaves are going to fall and die, and the tree is dying potentially. So not sure exactly what that symbolizes, or if I'm reading into that too much, but I think it could be just sort of a representation of what's happening in Middle Earth at the time, and that is a lot of destruction and death and Sauron's kind of return to power. Like I said earlier, we did see King Durin getting his Ring of Power here, so very excited to see this sequence. If it'll be quick, or we'll see this kind of played out in terms of him being gifted the ring. from Sauron, or if someone's, gifting it for him or whatever. But we do see King Durin appears to be accepting the Ring of Power, which, again, in my mind, it makes sense if he does accept that Ring of Power. The greed sets in, like we kind of know happens to the dwarves, and then he does decide, you know what, I do want to go mine deeper and delve deeper to get that mithril, to have these riches, which then obviously would lead to their kind of confrontation or issue that they might be having in Moria. We then have Arondir here. He is the elf that we followed his story in season 1, and it looks like he's being thrown onto whatever this thing over here is, this structure or cart or something that is happening. It looks like he's being thrown. He does land on his feet in true elven fashion and then pulls out an arrow and looks to shoot someone. So my thought, total stretch here, was that maybe that troll we saw earlier is attacking in the area that they're in, and maybe he tries to fight him and gets hurled over here. But definitely going to be seeing some elven acrobatics of some kind here, which always, I feel like that's like a staple of, you have to have one like unrealistic elven thing, like it's like Legolas riding a shield down the stairs or whatever. So we need some kind of gravity defying thing to happen at some point. So this might be that, or they could do a lot more of it, but we do see him here. We then get a shot of Numenor with an eagle actually flying, and we'll see it in just a second, but there's an eagle right here in the sky. And this is, I believe, our Pharazôn, who is getting off of the eagle. And again, like I said, we haven't seen too much of Numenor in the first season, or at least I feel like the conflict definitely has a lot more to go. And so I do think at some point in this show's time, in one of the seasons, we're going to see the actual fall of Numenor. So this could be building up to that. Maybe the main confrontation of season 2 are the rings in the Eregion Elven city, and then maybe it's going to keep building to where we see what happens with the Numenorians and kind of the downfall that they have. So definitely excited to see more of Numenor in season 2. We then see the kid we saw in season 1. I'm blanking on his name at this moment. Don't know, I forgot because he has a memorable name, but it's actually Theo is his name. So we do see a clip of him right there. We then see Isildur for the first time for just about a half second. He's looking up at something, looking a little bit beaten up here. So not sure what he's into. And then now towards the end, or at least close to the end, we do see all of these fiery catapults launching over at this elven city. Again, I believe this is the city in Eregion. I do believe the city is called Ost-in-Edil, if I'm not butchering that, but this is, I think, that city, which is in the region of Eregion. And again, if things are lining up, I think Sauron has infiltrated. He's had the rings made. Maybe they pushed him out and stopped him to an extent, so he's coming back to attack and take them. But definitely looks like it's going to be a rough go here in a minute for the elves in this city. We see Adar as well, who we saw in the first season, who was kind of the corrupted or tortured elf, who's kind of somewhere in between elf and orc, but not quite as orcish as the rest. But we do have the orcs behind him, so looks like he's leading some kind of an orc army, which again could be in that Eregion area. We then see our first look of our mysterious wizard, who I think a lot of people think is Gandalf, because at the end of the first season, he said, when in doubt to Nori, always follow your nose, which is obviously what Gandalf says to Merry. So if that's all you take it as, I think it is Gandalf. My speculation with the tinfoil hat on is that maybe this is potentially still a blue wizard, and it's just a saying that blue wizard had that he even passed along to Gandalf at some point. I'm not sure. We could have a Gandalf cameo in Rings of Power, where we actually see him interacting with this wizard. Who knows? But I would love for it to be a blue wizard, although I think it's going to be Gandalf, because I think that's going to draw in more people, especially for casual viewers to go, oh, I know the name Gandalf. But I'd love to see more blue wizards, because we've seen a lot of Gandalf, and I just want to see some other stuff in Middle-earth explored that we haven't yet. So I think he's in some kind of a rune desert area here, doing some kind of a spell ground slam thing. Again, not sure what's happening. And I'm not sure if this is still him here, and if that's Nori on the rope, potentially. It's a smaller looking creature holding on to this rope with this heavy wind blowing. Now, this could be unrelated to the scene totally, but the robes on this character above me does kind of look like the robes he has on here. So whether this is an accident, he's trying to learn some of his powers, or there's some kind of altercation happening, I'm not sure. But my money's on that being Nori, who's kind of in over her head and caught up in some kind of nonsense in the east. We then see Galadriel wielding some fire arrows and shooting over at a group of orcs. Again, I think this is the same shot here where she shoots and something is exploding. So definitely cool to see some fire arrows wielded. I don't think we've seen a whole lot of that, if any, before. Feels more like a video game thing. I remember playing through like the Two Towers and Return of the King games on PS2 or original Xbox, and unlocking the fire arrows or different types of arrows. So it is cool to see those being used, although I don't know how realistic that actually is, but I like seeing it. We do then see Elrond, who is leading a army of mounted elves that are riding forward. We just see him here for 1 second, but a pretty good amount of elves. Again, I would think in that same area trying to defend the city in Eregion. And we see Celebrimbor here looking a lot more beat up in this shot, and he's dropping these rings into the fire. If I had to try and count, it looks like there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I count 8 maybe, but it's kind of hard to tell. So there definitely could be one that's kind of snuck in there. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I see 8. So I'm not sure exactly what's happening here, but it does look like he's trying to get rid of the rings. These could also be lesser rings of power, so maybe they're not, but maybe he doesn't understand the full magnitude of what's happened, and he's trying to destroy the rings that he just helped make, and then Sauron maybe is going to inform him that that can't be done. But he is dropping these rings in here like so. We then see the fair form of Sauron again in more of a destroyed kind of workshop area. So something's definitely happened here already. Potentially he's back in the fair form trying to manipulate, get what he wants, but something has definitely happened here to make this place all look kind of rubbled like it does. And here we see the elves who are trying to arrest the fair form of Sauron. We see, I think, Celebrimbor here again looking very beat up, like he's almost been captured or imprisoned or whatever it is. So not sure. I think we're going to see some cool scenes with Sauron and Celebrimbor, because there's some pretty gruesome stuff that happens with Celebrimbor in the actual Middle-earth lore. So I don't know how much they'll be able to show of that or what we can get into, but I'm excited to see kind of that relationship unfold. We then see Sauron smirk, and he does a little hand turn, which then it pans out really far. And this looks to me to be, like an overhead shot maybe of this area of what's happening. So we see this blast going out, although it looks different enough that part of me thinks this is just something different altogether and not actually the same area like we see here, but not 100% sure. But here we do see this blast or a blast going out, and then it goes from inside kind of overhead like this to we see this structure outside like this, and it shoots out from here with like a billow of kind of like water and ice and maybe smoke, but it's all shooting out here. And as you can see, the whole area kind of freezes over from that tower. So I have no idea if these areas are related, and what we see here with Sauron is the same area at all, but there's definitely some spell or sorcery happening to kind of corrupt or change the terrain here, which again, it could definitely be him here. Maybe he's more powerful at this moment and doing a spell like this. Not 100% sure, but we do see that there. And then I believe that's the last clip. We do get the logo rolling there. So again, it's hard to say for sure because a lot of what we see, I think, is spliced together from different episodes and different scenes. So it's hard to make out for sure what's happening, but I thought it'd be fun again to look out. There are a few things that I didn't see in my first kind of look through. So August 29th is when that season comes out. Let me know what you guys think. I know reviews are super mixed in the show. I'm willing to give it a couple seasons to try and see what happens. I think I'm a lot more optimistic than others. So definitely not getting on the bandwagon for this, think it's going to be amazing, but I will give it a chance to see what it's about. But I'm curious what you guys think, if you're excited for the season, if you've kind of already written it off, or if there are other things I missed that you saw in the video that I didn't. Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to kind of break down more of these kind of trailers they have coming out before August. So appreciate you guys. And if you want to see more content like this that's not gaming related, let me know, because we might do more stuff like this in the future. But that'll do it for this one, and I'll see you guys in a future video.